Hilaria Baldwin. Fake Spanish accent. Cultural appropriation tends to be frowned upon these days. Cultural appropriation, of course, is the inappropriate or unacknowledged adoption of an element or elements of one culture or identity by members of another culture or identity. This can be controversial when members of a dominant culture appropriate from minority cultures. According to critics of the practice, cultural appropriation differs from acculturation, assimilation, or equal cultural exchange in that this appropriation is a form of colonialism. When cultural elements are copied from a minority culture by members of a dominant culture, and these elements are used outside of their original cultural context, sometimes even against the expressly stated wishes of members of the originating culture. The practice is often received negatively. Cultural appropriation is considered harmful by various groups and individuals, including indigenous people working for cultural preservation, those who advocate for collective intellectual property rights of the originating minority cultures, and those who have lived or are living under colonial rule. Cultural appropriation can include exploitation of another culture's religious and cultural traditions, dance steps, fashion, symbols, language, and music. Those who see this appropriation as exploitative state that cultural elements are lost or distorted when they are removed from their originating cultural contexts, and that such displays are disrespectful or even a form of desecration. Cultural elements that may have deep meaning to the original culture may be reduced to exotic fashion or toys by those from the dominant culture. Kirsten Johnston has written that when this is done, the imitator, who does not experience that oppression, is able to play temporarily an exotic other without experiencing any of the daily discriminations faced by other cultures. The concept of cultural appropriation has been subject to heavy criticism and debate. Critics note that the concept is often misunderstood or misimplied by the general public, and that charges of cultural appropriation are at times misapply to situations as trying food from a different culture or learning about different cultures. Now, of course, I have analysed Hilaria Baldwin, or Hilaria, as she prefers to be known as, and if you'd like to understand more about her behaviours and what she actually is ahead of what I've got to say in this video, I'd encourage you to go and watch them. They're easily found. Just search for Hilaria Baldwin in amongst my videos, and you'll find those on her and both her husband, Alec. If you've already watched those and understand them, then we can forge ahead. Hilaria Baldwin is a narcissist like her husband, and is an interesting example of what I call narcissistic cementation, where two narcissists come together and their collision actually arises in the cementation of a relationship. There are lots of different outcomes that can occur when two narcissists come together, be it romantically, socially, or in a work situation, or in a family environment. And I've touched upon some of those outcomes and combinations in the two excellent videos, When Narcissists Collide Part 1 and 2, and I'd encourage to watch those. I have more work to do on that, alongside explaining in greater detail those instances of narcissistic cementation. But that is what has happened here with Alec and Hilaria, or Hilaria Baldwin. But that isn't the purpose of this video today. It's merely an aside that they have, at least on the face of it, a stable and constructive relationship. There's more to it than that, but that's what it seems like to the world. And as part of that, that means that she invariably supports Alec Baldwin. I have analysed a video in the past where she has sought to speak out on his behalf vis-à-vis the situation surrounding the death of the cinematographer on the set of Rust. She's at it again. I have a separate video analysing what she does in relation to her appearance in front of the cameras outside of their home, so watch out for that coming very shortly. But in the context of that appearance, she once again uses a Spanish accent, and this has been picked up upon. It appears in the Mail Online in an article by Alicia Guzman, who writes, Boston-born Hilaria Baldwin is ridiculed for slipping into beyond offensive Spanish accent while asking photographers to leave her kids alone in wake of husband Alex manslaughter's charge. Hilaria Baldwin has come under fire again for using a fake Spanish accent while telling off photographers. The born and bred Bostonian, 39, apologised 2 years ago for faking a Spanish accent and claimed she had been raised with two cultures. Now she is under fire again after she approached photographers in New York City to chew them out for taking pictures of her children. Hilaria, who was born Hilary Lynn Haywood Thomas, appeared to slip back into her old accent as she dodged questions about her husband's involuntary manslaughter charge. The actor, 64, and armourer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed were charged for the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins for firing the fatal shot on the set of Rust. Baldwin says he'll fight the charges vigorously, calling it a miscarriage of justice, nullification of threat to control. Now, I'm not going to go into the wording of what Hilaria says to the photographers because I cover that in a separate video. However, the Mail reports, despite some being sympathetic to her cause, many were offended by the reappearance of the accent. It's just beyond offensive at this point that she continues with this Spanish accent. Regardless of the chaos of her mind in this situation, you're not Spanish, one wrote on Twitter. Another wrote, absolutely love that she's like, well, we travel to Spain annually. Mom, you lived in Boston daily. Boston accents aren't simply avoided. A woman named Perla wrote, Hillary needs to end this accent. I saw people feeling badly for her being stalked by paps, and of course that's valid, but the accent, my God. In other words, you're completely correct, a woman wrote. Another Tony Choi joke, everyone should be searching for a man who is as committed to you as she is to the bit. Cedar Long wrote, it's her emotional support accent. A man named Bradley joked, she and Austin Butler need some kind of support group for people who can't turn off the fake voice. Another criticised Hilaria, whose real name is Hillary, for never missing an opportunity to snatch a little bit of the spotlight. She didn't need to make this speech, a woman, Marielle, wrote. Now, we know she's from Boston. She travelled to Spain annually. She is not Spanish. Triple underline that. She is not Spanish. But then why does she use a Spanish accent? Well, quite simply, it's character trait acquisition. For the purpose of asserting control over an audience and making her seem more interesting and exotic, she affected a Spanish accent. We all recall the cucumber aspect, which was rather hilarious. Her narcissism identifies that by taking the character traits of Spanish people and manufacturing the suggestion that she is actually Spanish, that enables her to draw fuel from people by way of their reactions and to control them. Oh, you're Spanish. How interesting. Yada, yada, yada. Triangulation by talking about all things Spanish. So her narcissism has selected speaking with a Spanish accent by way of character trait acquisition to aid her in the assertion of control and in relation to the drawing of fuel from people. She, of course, was caught out and then issued false contrition by way of a supposed apology. And it shows, of course, that that was very much false contrition. Why? Because she's doing it again. The reset button has been pressed. There is never any genuine contrition and apology from a narcissist. Her narcissism, having dealt with that threat to control of being accused of being a false Spaniard, issued false contrition. Some people accepted it, others didn't, and then the narcissism believes that it's achieved control and then moves on from that. Now there's another opportunity which is separate and distinct from the previous false apology, and therefore the narcissism selects, as she's talking to people, use of the accent once again. It's not that she forgets herself and slips back into it. It's simply that her narcissism guides her to utilize it because the narcissism indicates that this is useful for her to do. It's part of the fact that she will probably do it quite a lot and other people have not yet picked up on the fact that she's doing it again. But here, she engages in the use of a Spanish accent in the footage. You'll see that in the separate video, and it's done by way of character trait acquisition to assert control over the people that she's speaking to and to draw fuel from them. Her narcissism reverts to it because it deems that there's no problem in doing so, because she has no sense of accountability. And it's a character trait that has been acquired and that she still continues to use because the narcissism deems that it's good to go once again. It also underpins the fact that the previous supposed apology is entirely fake, as I explained to you. So her use of this and the false Spanish accent is another useful way of understanding another aspect of the way that the narcissist behaves. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.